They don't need to destroy you. They just need to move you, slightly. Anger, guilt, shame, one flick of emotion, and you hand them the keys to your kingdom, your mind. Machiavelli didn't fear armies, he feared emotions. Because once someone owns your emotions, they own you. Enemies don't always come with weapons. Sometimes they come smiling, with praise, with approval, with just enough affection to disarm you. And when you react, you're not defending yourself. You're showing your coordinates. They now know how to control you, because they know what moves you. Control your emotional output, or it will be monetized, mapped, and manipulated. They don't need to shout. They whisper, poke at your pride, guilt you for your ambition, or flatter your insecurity. And when you show them a response, even a twitch, you've already lost. Imagine this. Their insult hits a wall. Their praise gets no reaction. Their silence is met with your stillness. That terrifies them. Because unreadable people are uncontrollable. And in the Machiavellian playbook, that's the most dangerous kind. To be emotionally dangerous is not to be heartless. It is to be surgical. You don't erase your humanity. You weaponize it. You don't feel less. You reveal nothing. You don't react. You observe. You let them talk. And while they reveal everything, you stay silent. And silence is not absence. It's pressure. The emotionally weak talk too much. They explain, they justify, they confess to people who are taking notes. Machiavelli never wasted words. He said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." And the fool? He vents. He explodes. He weeps in public and calls it authenticity. That's not honesty. That's exposure. That's broadcasting your strategy to a world built to exploit it. You think people respect your vulnerability. Some do, but most don't. They use it. They study your weaknesses like blueprints. They catalog what triggers you, what excites you, what makes you lose control. And once they have that, they don't need force. They don't need facts. They just press the right button, and you destroy yourself from the inside. This is not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. Because in the modern world, power is not taken through violence. It's taken through guilt, praise, flattery, shame, silence. The most effective weapons are emotional. The most effective enemies are invisible. And if you can't control your emotional output, you will never control the outcome. To win, you must become unreadable. You must learn to say nothing and watch everything. Let them guess. Let them project. Let them fear what they cannot name. Power begins where emotion ends. Not because you feel nothing, but because you show nothing. It's not about being cold. It's about being calculated. Emotion is still there. Quiet, contained, weaponized. You don't use it to respond. You use it to position. The average man reacts with feeling. The dangerous man responds with tactics. He doesn't ask, "How do I feel?" He asks, "What gives me the most control here?" He doesn't rage when insulted. He waits. He doesn't beg when rejected. He vanishes. He doesn't explode. He recalibrates. This is what it means to be emotionally dangerous. Not numb, strategic, not hollow, disciplined, not indifferent, selective. Your calm is a weapon. Your silence is a mirror. Your detachment is dominance. You don't need to yell. You don't need to prove. You just need to stop giving people your emotions for free. Every time you react, you pay. And worse, they get richer off your reactions. Your sigh of frustration is intel. Your voice cracking is a signal. Your need to explain is a map. And if you don't own these moments, someone else will. They don't want to beat you physically. They want to control your decisions. And they do that by dragging you into emotional quicksand. The weak man defends himself constantly. The powerful man lets the insult hang in the air and does nothing, because he knows something most don't. The louder you speak, the more predictable you become. And predictable men are controllable men. This is the art of the invisible fortress, not one made of stone, but one made of control, silence, and restraint, an inner castle with no doors for others to enter. You keep your thoughts guarded, your motives unclear, and your energy untouchable. And in doing so, you become feared, because nothing is more terrifying than someone who cannot be manipulated. You stop chasing approval. You stop defending your character. You stop trying to be understood. You become self-contained. You become sovereign. You become dangerous, not by volume but by void, not by domination but by disappearance, not by showing strength but by never needing to prove it. And now, people don't know what to do with you. They hesitate before insulting you. They hold back their games. They realize they cannot move you, so they fear what you might do. That's what Machiavelli knew. Realize they cannot move you, so they fear what you might do. That's what Machiavelli knew. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. And fear, true fear, doesn't come from anger. It comes from restraint. When you stop reacting, you start ruling. And when you stop giving your emotions to people who haven't earned them, you become untouchable. Not cold, not cruel, just controlled. You don't rise by exploding. You rise by never letting them see you bleed. Stay sharp, stay unreadable, stay in control. They'll try again. Of course they will. The moment you go silent, the noise around you increases. They poke harder. They whisper louder. They escalate their games, because your calm is unsettling. Your detachment is offensive to those who survive on your reactions. And the moment they realize their tricks no longer work, they panic. Because people don't want your honesty. They want your emotion. They want to know they can still reach you, still provoke you, still pull your strings. But when you give them nothing, you flip the power. The person who says less controls the room. The one who doesn't flinch controls the conflict. The one who stays still makes everyone else uncomfortable. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't even need to respond. Because real control is not reactive. It's predictive. You see the game before it begins. You read the room before a word is said. You let them make the first move, and then you take the whole board. This is what emotional discipline gives you. Not peace, but precision. You no longer react out of impulse. You act with clarity. They insult you. You study their weakness. They provoke you. You smile slightly and let them drown in their own need for attention. They lie. You remember. You don't argue. You never chase. You don't waste time convincing anyone. Because you understand the one rule the emotionally undisciplined always forget. The person who can be triggered can be controlled, and the person who cannot becomes untouchable. Your presence starts to change. You walk in silence, but people listen. You speak little, but people lean in. You withhold affection, and they crave it more. Because the rarest thing in this world is emotional control. Most people are exposed by a single look, a single word, a moment of discomfort. But you remain unshaken, not because you feel nothing, but because you've mastered the storm inside. You're not suppressing, you're storing, you're not ignoring, you're calculating, and this confuses them, because they were raised to believe emotional openness is strength. But Machiavelli would call it a liability. He'd say, never show the wound while the knife is still in their hand. Let them believe you feel nothing. Let them believe they didn't reach you, because the more they underestimate your depth, the less they prepare for your strategy. You don't yell in the face of betrayal. You disappear. You don't demand respect. You command it through silence. You don't explain your moves. You execute. And when questioned, you answer with action. They won't understand it at first. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of being distant, arrogant, cold. Let them. You were not born to be emotionally accessible to people who haven't earned the right. You were not born to explain yourself to people who benefit from your chaos. You were not born to leak power through expression. You were born to rule yourself, to master the space between impulse and response, to become so emotionally disciplined that your silence creates more fear than their screams ever could. This is your evolution, from prey to predator, from chaos to calculation, from noise to nuclear stillness. Let them talk, let them provoke, let them guess. Because every time you don't react, they lose a little more control. Every time you don't respond, you take back a little more power. And eventually, they stop. Not because they understand you, but because they fear what they can't. Emotionally dangerous isn't about being cruel. It's about being unreachable. And when they can no longer reach you, you rise, quietly, powerfully, unstoppably. They'll try to circle back, make peace, pretend nothing happened, play nice, not because they respect you, but because they realize they can't control you. And for manipulators, that's terrifying. Control is their currency, and when you go cold, you bankrupt them. They'll test you with kindness. They'll bait you with guilt. They'll flatter your ego, hoping you drop your guard. But you've seen behind the curtain. You no longer chase validation. You no longer mistake attention for love. You no longer confuse words for loyalty. Because once you've tasted real power, the kind that comes from emotional stillness, you lose your appetite for the chaos that once fed you. You start valuing things differently. Peace becomes more important than connection. Purpose becomes more important than approval. Discipline becomes more important than expression. And that shift, it changes everything. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening. You stop negotiating your worth with people who can't afford you. You stop offering your energy to people who treat it like it's disposable. You become inaccessible, not because you're better than them, but because you finally realize that not everyone deserves access. Some people only come close to gather intel. Some people only get close so they can find the best place to strike. Machiavelli said, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. So you audit your circle, you cut the clowns, you silence the parasites, you don't argue with fools, you vanish from arenas where chaos is the culture. You now live by a code. Speak only when it builds power. Move only when it shifts the game. React only when it serves your strategy. You don't waste energy on things you cannot control. You don't seek closure from people who aren't capable of it. You don't beg for peace in places designed for war. You create distance. You build inner walls. You detach, not out of fear, but out of respect for your own mind. And in doing so, you force people to confront themselves. When they can't provoke you, they're left with their own reflection. And that reflection is louder than your silence ever could be. Now they start to question themselves. Why doesn't he react? Why doesn't he flinch? Why doesn't he explain? What is he thinking? And the truth is, you're not thinking about them at all. You've moved beyond the game. Because power isn't just control over others. It's control over yourself, over your state, over your silence, over your urges. The modern world teaches you to feel everything, to express everything, to share everything. But Machiavelli would warn you, he who becomes master of a city, accustomed to freedom, and does not destroy it, will himself be destroyed. The same applies to your emotional world. If you don't destroy the habits that enslave you, they will destroy your potential. So you destroy them, not with violence, but with vigilance. You begin to watch yourself like a hawk. Every reaction becomes a battlefield. Every silence becomes a strategy. Every decision becomes a test of discipline. And the longer you practice, the stronger the fortress becomes. You are no longer the man who reacts. You are the man who commands, no longer the man who feels everything. You are the man who chooses what to feel, when, where, and how. And that is rare, that is dangerous, that is powerful. Because in a world drowning in emotional chaos, the man who can remain still is not just respected. He is feared. So remain still, remain unreadable, remain dangerous. Because once you master yourself, no one else ever can. So remain still, remain unreadable, remain dangerous. Because once you master yourself, no one else ever can. And those who feel this truth, those who recognize the shift in power, those who are no longer satisfied with surface games, they don't just walk away. They vanish strategically. They learn. They evolve. They build in silence. And if you've made it this far, you're not like the rest. You already know this world doesn't reward the loud. It rewards the calculated. So take this moment seriously. Every word you've read wasn't just entertainment. It was a test to see if you can sit with truth without flinching. A test to see if your mind still belongs to the crowd, or if you're ready to rise above it. Most people will click away, because truth is heavy, and power demands responsibility. But if you felt something shift inside you, if this voice felt like it echoed thoughts you've never said aloud, then this space was built for you, not for the masses, but for the dangerous few who think like ghosts, move like shadows, and strike with silence. Subscribe, not for content, but for training. Because here, we don't just speak power, we sharpen it, silently, strategically, ruthlessly. Join the circle, where weakness is exposed, noise is ignored, and the mind is reprogrammed. For war, for clarity, for control. They won't see you coming, and they'll never understand why they can't stop thinking about you. That's the art. That's the edge. That's the psychology. Subscribe before they do. Because in this game, information is leverage, and you're either the observer or the observed. Your move. They taught you to speak gently, to be kind, agreeable, easy to understand. They wanted your fire put out before you ever discovered it. Why? Because a mind that can't be predicted is a threat. A person who doesn't need validation can't be controlled. But look around. This world is built on illusions, smiles that mean nothing, words spoken only to manipulate outcomes, all wrapped in politeness. But you've begun to see through it. And that makes you dangerous. Because the moment you stop responding emotionally, they lose control. The moment you analyze instead of react, you become immune. You don't fight fire with fire. You starve it of oxygen. You let your silence rot their need for reaction. That's power, not noise, not status, not applause. Power is the man who knows something you don't. Power is the one who waits and lets you reveal your own weakness. And the moment you understand that, you no longer play to win. You play so they never get a chance. You walk in with no need to prove, because you already calculated every outcome. You've rehearsed this game in silence while they posted selfies for applause. They don't know that every betrayal was a tutorial, every humiliation was a refinement, and every night you spent in silence was the making of something no one is ready for. Let them talk. Let them underestimate you. Let them forget your name. Because when you move again, it won't be to impress. It'll be to remove. No second chances, no explanations, no traces. This isn't anger. This isn't revenge. This is mathematics, cold, precise, unavoidable. Now listen carefully. You're no longer just consuming content. You're being shaped by it. Every phrase rewiring your instincts, every sentence conditioning your awareness. This isn't entertainment. It's armor. Because out there, you are either the one who understands the rules or the one being played by them. So here's the part they won't tell you. The most powerful men and women you admire. They weren't lucky. They were quietly calculating while you were watching. This content is your entry, but only if you act. Subscribe. Not for noise, but for tactics. Not for opinions, but for blueprints. Not for company, but for the kind of isolation that builds real inner strength. Because while the crowd scrolls, you sharpen. While they react, you adapt. While they crave attention, you disappear. And when it's time, you emerge unrecognizable. This channel isn't for everyone. It's for the few who stopped asking and started studying. It's for the few who realized it's better to be feared than loved when the world refuses to respect calm power. Subscribe. And if you're truly who you think you are, stay. Not to follow, but to evolve. Silently, sharply, strategically.